there, welcome to Off Duty. I'm Wendy Bounds. Well, yesterday, Evan Newmark, he hijacked my show when I was out sick. That guy is an animal, but you know what? I could go big too. We're here at the Bronx Zoo. Plenty of animals here. Later, I'm going to hang with a baby giraffe and talk to some barking sea lions. But first up, for Earth Day, which is Sunday, we have an amazing conservation effort underway by the Wildlife Conservation Society. It's all about the turtles. We're here at the Bronx Zoo, which is part of an extraordinary effort to revive the turtle and tortoise population of the world. Some of these species are down to just the single digits. We have Don Boyer here. He is curator of herpetology here at the zoo, and Jim Breheny, he is director of the zoo. And who are you holding?
This is a Rhode Island snakeneck turtle.
This turtle is obviously on the verge of extinction. What are you all doing here to help stop that?
Well, we're part of a larger effort to develop assurance colonies for these, build up the populations of these, work with captive breeding of these, with the ultimate thought that once numbers are sufficient, we could actually engage in a reintroduction effort.
For people who don't know why turtles are on the verge of extinction, what are some of the driving forces that have put this in motion?
Well, there's certainly a variety of factors. For this particular species, the international pet trade was a big factor in its decline. Had a very limited range and a very small populations, and basically was overcollected until the numbers are so low it's functionally extinct in the wild.
The real challenge is securing a safe environment to re-release them to in their home range countries. So it might require working with local governments, with local people, habitat protection, setting up parks or reserves. Right. So the real challenge is to have a safe place to return the animals to the wild.
Right.
But in order to be able to do that, we have to start now getting these animals, establishing these assurance colonies, and producing viable offspring.
So this turtle in particular is believed to help cure cancer, which I assume is part of its problem.
Yeah, this is an example of a gold coin turtle from China. And this particular species, when people believe that this species can cure cancer, you can imagine that every wild turtle now has a huge bounty on its head. So these have basically been collected out of existence in the wild.
How much would a turtle like this, do you have any idea what it costs?
I think wild turtles collected in China now are going from anywhere $15,000 to $20,000, perhaps more.
Per turtle?
Per turtle.
Unbelievable. Very, very, very valuable. So for people, may I hold him?
Sure.
For people who cannot believe that a turtle could cost $15,000 to $20,000, what is it people are buying? I mean, they really believe this turtle will cure their cancer?
Yes, and if you were terminally ill and your doctor told you that you were going to die and you had the resources and the assets to do what you think could save your life, you would spend $15,000 or $20,000 on a turtle that you believe could cure your cancer.
Sort of the same way you might for an injection. If somebody said this injection has the potential to cure your cancer, people think this one turtle, eating this turtle, can cure their cancer.
Right, and that's one of the biggest problems that we have in potential reintroduction of turtles and tortoises back into the wild is dealing with cultural beliefs and being sensitive to cultural beliefs, and at the same time trying to educate people on matters of wildlife.
This turtle shell looks soft almost, is it?
This is a giant reticulated soft-shelled turtle from northern New Guinea. And it's one of those turtle species, the whole family has a hugely reduced bony element to the shell, so the shell is reduced to these cartilaginous, tough, fleshy shell. Yep.
How long do turtles in general live?
You know, turtles are some of the longest lived vertebrates on the planet, so they can live anywhere, you know, even 100 years is not unusual for some turtles, and they've been known to live over 165 years.
That must help your case in terms of trying to repopulate many of these species.
Yeah, and that's the exact reason they can't tolerate extracting all of these adult turtles. Turtles can live a very long time, but when you eliminate the adults from the population, there's just no chance for them to recover.
Well, this one has a good chance right here because he's with you. Thanks you guys so much for being with us. Now, one of the great parts about my job is I get to go to cool places like the MLB Fan Cave. No, you had yours, and here at the Bronx Zoo, but at the MLB Fan Cave, you don't get to go to the petting zoo and feed these guys. I'm gonna sit here and do that, and while I do, why don't you guys check in with Lee Hawkins. He has a report on the late and the great Luther Vandross.
R&B singer Luther Vandross was at the height of his career, having just won Grammy Song of the Year when he had a stroke and ultimately passed away in 2005. Now his record company is set to release Hidden Gems, which is a collection of rare Luther Vandross recordings just ahead of what would have been his 62nd birthday. And I want to welcome Fonzie Thornton, who was a collaborator and sang with Luther Vandross on 90% of the songs that he put out.
You know, when we were growing up, you know, I knew Luther since he was 14, and when we were growing up, you know, we were watching the Temptations and the Supremes and all of the great Motown acts, and you know, the presentation, you know, was always so important. So I think that when Luther really got a chance to get into his stride and present those shows, he always remembered that quality and that class of those things that we grew up admiring. You know, Luther was open, but the thing about him is he always had vision. He always knew what he wanted to do. He always knew how he wanted to do it. So if you wrote with him, you could bring a completely finished song to him, and he'd say, yeah, that's good, you know, but I would change that line. I would change that line because when I sing it, I want to do it like this. I want to do it like that. And he was very intuitive about presenting that voice, and that's why all the people who ever met him, myself, all the musicians, any of the singers, we all sort of stuck with him because like, this guy knows what he's talking about. Where did he come from?
Well, this is not a greatest hits record, is it?
No, this is not a greatest hits record. Instead, I think that myself and his niece and his cousin, in connection with the record company, decided it might be really interesting to come up with something for the fans that we would dig deeper into his albums and bring out some of the songs that the fans always loved that were never, you know, some of the diehard fans will know some of these songs. Some of the people that were not as familiar with him will be really pleased, say, wow, I never heard that before. What a cool song, you know?
And because he was the best, it was so tragic when he had the stroke in 2003. But I can remember that there were people that were going to visit him that were singers. One of them was Patti LaBelle.
That's right.
Who actually made a statement and said, I visited Luther and Luther will sing again. And that was really important to his fan base. It came as a surprise.
Yes, yes. Well,
when he passed away.
It was really a big surprise. You know, because we had been told by the doctors just a few days before that he was doing better, that it might take another couple of years for him to really sort of get back some of the things that he had lost. Strokes are very debilitating, you know, and we thought he was doing okay. But I think he also just got tired, you know. I think that, first of all, when you are a person like him and you are a person who is in control and very, you know, and so as focused, you know, when your body goes through a transition like this, it must become a very difficult thing to realize you can't do simple things that you used to do, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that he just got tired of not being fully, you know, fully the Luther that he had been before. The one thing is throughout, he never lost his sense of humor. You know, the thing is, we could be in his hospital room laughing our heads off about something, because that's what we always did. We laughed a lot. One of the coolest things was a lot of people came down to visit him. Dionne Warwick came a number of times. Cissy Houston came. Aretha pulled up with her big tour bus outside of the hospital and came up to see him. That's right. She doesn't fly. One of the greatest things, Nick and Val used to come by and pick me up in my apartment.
Nick Ashford and Val.
That's right. And we used to go ride down and see him, and we would talk and sing and that kind of stuff. But the coolest thing was one time Teddy Pendergrass came to see him. Of course, Teddy had been in that major accident himself, and he was in a wheelchair. So when he came into the room, Teddy came in his wheelchair, and he's, you know, very upbeat, very, very cool guy. But he was manipulating the whole thing with something with his mouth. And Luther, who was sitting in the chair, just, you know, gets up and decides that he's going to start singing a song. So next thing I know, he and Teddy are singing, and the three of us are harmonizing in this room. I'm saying, look at these guys. They're, you know, both of them are like sort of debilitated, but they're still like burning bright. It was.
Well, and even on 10%, they probably were killing it. It is unfortunate that he passed away, but he left such a profound body of work.
That's right.
When he left, and this new album now, it's nice that it's not gonna be just hit after hit after hit, because it will help to familiarize people.
I think so. And the thing that I want to say, which I said in the liner notes, is that, you know, from the beginning, Luther was a songwriter first. When I first met him, he after the first rehearsal, he pulled out this hardcover notebook, like this worn notebook with all of these lyrics he had written, and he started singing all these different melodies to all these lyrics. So for him, the song was always the thing. So these albums are filled with songs that really meant a lot to him, whether he wrote them or whether they were songs that he covered. And he, none of it was throwaway. He never went in the studio and like did a performance and said, okay, that's good enough. He really took his time and honed every single thing. And that's why these songs from the albums are going to be such treats to people who have not heard them, because they're all on the same level of quality and meaning.
I didn't want to leave the zoo without seeing the giraffes. Now you see that baby out there? The baby was born just in the last couple of months and recently reintroduced into this habitat here with the other giraffes and the ostrich. When the baby grows up, it will have a 25-pound heart. Now that heart will pump blood up through the neck to the brain of the giraffe at 2 to 3 times the force of that in a man. I wonder who is feeding these guys when they get hungry. That must be a very cool job. And speaking of cool jobs, we're going to show you one in Alaska where somebody lands planes on sheets of ice. That's one place these guys are never going to go.
In early April, a science expedition called Project Aether set off into Denali National Park in Alaska to launch weather balloons with GoPro cameras to the edge of space. But the only way to get to the ideal launch site on the east side of Mount McKinley was by ice plane. Richard Olmsted is one of Alaska's ice pilots.
Well, my name's Richard Olmsted, and I work for Talkeetna Air Taxi. We fly mountain climbers and sightseers into the Alaskan mountain range. Right now we're sitting on the Ruth Glacier. The Ruth Glacier is about 25 miles long, flows off the southeast side of Mount McKinley. Right here in the gorge, it's about a mile wide and about 3,800 feet thick, and flowing at the rate of about 3 feet a day, which is quite fast, really. And it's kind of, you can think of a glacier sort of like a river, just in really slow motion. It wants to move, kind of like water does. The Great Gorge here is just a little deeper than the Grand Canyon. It's only about 5 miles long, but it's quite deep. We're sitting on about 3,000 feet of ice, and so if we melted all the ice out of here, it'd be almost 10,000 feet deep. And so we kind of got the Grand Canyon on depth by a long way. It can be challenging to land on a glacier in general, and in the Ruth in particular, even just with the lighting conditions, the wind that blows down the gorge. And we have to survey the glaciers, as we fly by, and just kind of get an idea of how the surface moves, and try to gauge the depth of the snow. But it's really fairly straightforward to land. Glaciers are all kind of sloped, and so we're landing uphill and turning around and taking off downhill. We have skis, retractable skis on the airplane as well as the wheels. In fresh powdery snow, landing on the glaciers, sort of like sitting down on a cloud. You're not even aware sometimes that you've actually landed on the ground until the airplane begins to slow down. I've been flying here out of Talkeetna for 17 years, and almost every flight, somebody will say, this is the first time I've ever been in a small airplane. I think it's, safer than crossing the street. I can't say the only way, but the easiest, most common way for people to get out to anywhere in the Alaska range is to fly and land on a glacier. There's just so much amazing scenery out here, and the only way to really see it is to take an airplane ride and fly out and look it over, and then ideally landing on the glacier gives you the opportunity then to really get out and grasp the scale of what's out here. We offer a flight that will go right over the summit of McKinley. McKinley is 20,320 feet high. Once the airplane gets to 12,000 feet, since this is a non-pressurized airplane, then the pilot has to wear an oxygen mask. Above 15,000 feet, then we have to make it available to the passengers. They can choose to use it or not as they wish. Most everybody wants to wear the oxygen, though, interestingly enough. The lifestyle is, it kind of depends on when you ask. You know, in the summertime, the days are really long here. We only have 4 hours maybe of nighttime, and so, you know, it's, I might come to work at 8 o'clock and not get off work until 10 o'clock at night. But for me, it works out pretty good.
Lions, tigers, bears, giraffes, they have it all here at the Bronx Zoo, but maybe the most chill animal is the sea lion. They are hanging out here. When they're awake, they bark, they make their own special kind of music, just like this. That sounded pretty good to me, but let's ask Jim Fusilli. He's our pop and rock critic, and see what he's got on tap this weekend.
I had the lion, I had it all, from sun to heights, so wonderful.
So Dave, Ghost the musical is coming from London to Broadway. Is that a way to look at it, or is this a whole different type of show? Or what are your challenges, I guess?
Well, we actually have been very lucky because we were 3 months in Manchester in England, where we could go and see, you know, the show over and over and do little changes. And then we've been about a year and a few months in London. What's the most toughest time of it is watching a show in front of an audience, but it's also the time when you learn the most. You know, it's that thing when you're making a record in the studio and you're listening to it on great speakers, and then you play it to a bunch of friends, and then you suddenly hear it for the first time. We've been constantly tweaking it and changing it at Matthew's direction a lot of the time, and often Glenn and I have been thinking this bit doesn't work musically. But now I think we've got it to a stage where there's not a lot when we all sit back and look at it that we want to change anymore. You can kind of feel it, can't you? It's like this, you know, the temperature of the room changes, you know, we know the moments are coming that, you know, we've seen the reaction in Manchester and London where the whole audience sort of gasps or cries or, you know, shouts out loud or laughs. But it's going to be interesting seeing it in New York, you know, because it's a New York story.
When you were approached to do this project, even before you brought Glenn Ballard into the project, and you were told that there was going to be a musical based on the beloved movie Ghost, did you see it as a challenge? Did you see problems, or did you see opportunities? How did you look at it?
Well, the first thing that I was wanting to be reassured by was that the writer, Bruce Joel Rubin, who wrote the original script, that he'd been writing the book for the musical. He had a way of expressing himself that I knew would be somebody that'd be very easy to collaborate with. Even though I think he was worried about collaborating, because a lot of writers are used to sitting in a room on their own and their thoughts pouring out onto the paper. All of a sudden, there's a few other people in the room and there's another element, which is music. But what happened in our first big meeting with him, and Glenn was there as well, Bruce was talking about all the different things, and I just started playing what he was talking, and this big sort of smile came on his face, and he realized, oh yeah, there doesn't need to be so much sort of you know, dialogue all the time, because, you know, if you simply change a chord, you know, from a minor chord to a major seventh chord, it kind of explains something.
Talking to me, they won't be talking to me, like you started for me.
Well, my time at the Bronx Zoo is sadly coming to an end, but before I go, I want to go check out the Nubian ibex. I have never seen anything like that, and the gelada baboons. Now, both of these creatures have an amazing pad right up here. This entire Bronx Zoo is about 265 acres. It's open almost every day of the year except for a few holidays. Check on bronxzoo.com. Now, here's where my producer wanted me to insert a rather rude joke about my host yesterday, Evan Newmark, and the baboons, but you know what? I love Evan, and I'm not going to do it. I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend. Happy Earth Day, and remember, one of the best ways you can support conservation is to visit your local zoo. I'm going to go check out those baboons. See you soon.